For decades, fighters trained based on ideas that seemed logical but were actually destroying their bodies. Coaches passed down methods because that's how they'd learned. Champions endorsed approaches that were slowly killing them. Science eventually caught up and proved most of it wrong. But not before careers ended early, not before brains got damaged, not before fighters died cutting weight or collapsed from dehydration. These aren't minor mistakes. These are training myths that almost killed fighters. Welcome to Loving Fighters. Myth 1. More sparring equals better preparation. This was gospel for decades. If you wanted to be ready for a fight, you sparred constantly. Hard rounds, full power, hundreds of rounds per camp. Some old-school gyms had fighters sparring every single day. 2-a-days during fight camps. The logic seemed obvious. Fighting prepares you for fighting. You can't simulate real combat without real combat. The harder you spar, the more prepared you'll be. The reality was brain damage accumulating with every session. Fighters were getting concussed in training more often than in actual fights. The damage was invisible until it wasn't. Chuck Liddell sparred brutally throughout his career. He was known for wars in the gym. By the end of his career, his chin was gone. He'd been knocked out so many times in training that his brain couldn't take punishment anymore. The knockouts in fights were just the final straws. The real damage happened in the gym. Gary Goodridge, early UFC and Pride fighter, now has severe dementia. He can barely function. Most of that damage came from training, not from his actual fights. He sparred thousands of rounds over his career. Each one took something from him. James Toney, Meldrick Taylor, countless boxers from previous generations showing symptoms of CTE. The sparring culture created time bombs in their brains. Modern camps have shifted dramatically. Fighters like Georges St. Pierre popularized light technical sparring, work timing and positioning without trying to hurt each other. Save the damage for actual fights where you get paid. Max Holloway rarely spars hard anymore. Neither does Alexander Volkanovski. They stay sharp through drilling and light work without destroying their brains in the gym. The fighters with the longest, healthiest careers are often the ones who spar the least. Myth 2. Dehydration is an acceptable way to cut weight. For decades, fighters cut massive amounts of weight through water manipulation. Sit in saunas for hours. Wear plastic suits while exercising. Stop drinking water days before weigh-ins. Take hot baths with Epsom salt. Do anything to sweat out those final pounds. The goal was fighting at weights far below their natural size. A 185-pound man fighting at 155. A 170-pound man cutting to 145. The bigger you were on fight night, the bigger advantage you had. So everyone cut as much as they could survive. The deaths started piling up. Yang Jianbing died in 2015 cutting weight for a fight in China. He lost too much water too fast. His kidneys failed. His heart stopped. He was 21 years old, just a kid trying to make weight. These aren't isolated cases. Fighters have collapsed during weight cuts and needed emergency hospitalization. Some suffered permanent kidney damage. Others had strokes from the blood thickening as water left their bodies. The ones who survived severe cuts often performed terribly anyway. Their bodies couldn't recover in 24 hours from losing 15 or 20 pounds of water. One championship banned extreme weight cutting entirely. They do hydration tests. If you're dehydrated at weigh-in, you don't fight at that weight, period. The UFC has implemented weigh-in reforms. California and other athletic commissions now check hydration levels. Early weigh-ins give fighters more time to rehydrate. The myth that you could safely drain 20 pounds of water and perform at your best has been exposed as dangerous nonsense that killed people. Myth 3. Pain means the workout is working. No pain, no gain. Push through the hurt. Your body is lying to you when it says stop. This mentality filled gyms for generations. Coaches screamed at fighters to ignore warning signs. Rest was weakness. Pain was progress. The result was destroyed joints and chronic injuries. Fighters trained through torn ligaments until the damage became permanent. They ignored stress fractures until bones broke completely. Dominic Cruz tore his ACL, came back too soon, tore it again. His body was telling him to rest. The culture told him to push through. He lost years of his prime to injuries that proper recovery might have prevented. Modern sports science emphasizes recovery as much as training. Sleep, nutrition, deload weeks, active rest. The body adapts during recovery, not during the workout itself. Training breaks you down. Rest builds you back stronger. Ignoring pain doesn't make you tough. It makes you injured. Myth 4. Running long distances builds fight cardio. Every old school camp had fighters running 5 to 10 miles every morning. Road work was sacred. If you couldn't run for an hour, you couldn't fight for 5 rounds. The logic seemed sound. Build an aerobic base and you'll have endless endurance. Fighters would wake up at 5 in the morning and hit the streets. Miles and miles of steady running. It looked like dedication. It felt like work. Champions did it, so everyone did it. The problem was specificity. Fighting isn't steady-state cardio. It's explosive bursts followed by brief recovery. Sprints, not marathons. You throw a combination that takes everything you have for 3 seconds. Then you recover while moving for 10 seconds. Then you explode again. Repeat for 15 or 25 minutes. A fighter with marathon endurance but no explosive conditioning would gas out from throwing combinations, even though they could run for hours at moderate pace. Watch old fights where both guys are exhausted by round 3. They could probably run 10 miles, but they can't throw 10 hard punches in a row without gasping. Their aerobic base was developed, but their anaerobic capacity was neglected. They trained the wrong energy system. Joel Jamieson changed how fighters think about conditioning. His work on energy systems showed that fight cardio requires training multiple systems specifically. Aerobic base matters, but so does anaerobic capacity and lactic power. You need all 3 developed in the right proportions for your sport. Long, slow runs don't build the ability to explode repeatedly for 5 rounds. Interval training does. Sport-specific conditioning does. Running 10 miles might make you a good runner. It doesn't automatically make you a good fighter. The energy systems are different. Myth 5. You should train through illness. Being sick was no excuse. Real fighters trained through colds, flus, infections. Taking days off meant you'd fall behind. Opponents were training while you rested. The warrior mentality demanded suffering. This myth killed people. Training while sick stresses an already compromised immune system. Viral infections that affect the heart can cause sudden cardiac events during intense exercise. Fighters have collapsed during training with undiagnosed viral myocarditis. The heart inflammation made intense exercise lethal. Even when it doesn't kill you, training sick extends illness and prevents proper recovery. A cold that would last 3 days becomes a 2-week ordeal. The immune system never fully clears the infection because you keep stressing your body. Modern protocols are simple. If you're sick, rest until you're recovered. The training you miss matters less than the training you'll miss if you turn a minor illness into a major one. Myth 6. Fighters should avoid lifting weights. This myth persisted for decades in boxing especially. Weights make you slow. Weights make you muscle-bound. Weights gas you out. Muscles built in the gym don't translate to fighting power. Real fighters built strength through bodyweight exercises and bag work only. Lifting was for bodybuilders, not athletes. The fear was that big muscles would restrict movement and tire quickly. The science demolished this completely. Proper strength training improves power output, injury resistance, and bone density. It doesn't slow you down if programmed correctly. The key is training for strength and power, not hypertrophy. Fighters don't need to look like bodybuilders. They need to produce force efficiently. Properly designed strength programs do exactly that. Fighters who avoided weights were leaving performance on the table and increasing injury risk. Weak muscles around joints make those joints vulnerable. Strong muscles protect them. Fighters who never lifted had higher injury rates than those who trained strength intelligently. Evander Holyfield was one of the first heavyweight boxers to embrace serious weight training. He hired strength coaches and built muscles specifically for boxing performance. Critics said he'd slow down. He didn't. The results spoke for themselves. He moved up from cruiserweight and competed with natural heavyweights through superior conditioning and power. He beat bigger men because he was stronger pound for pound. Modern fighters universally incorporate strength training. It's not optional anymore. The myth that weights hurt fighting performance died hard, but it's finally dead. Every elite camp has strength and conditioning coaches. Every serious fighter lifts. The only debate now is how to program it correctly for specific needs. Myth 7. You should spar your hardest right before a fight. The old approach was ramping up intensity as fight night approached. Peak sparring in the final weeks. Go to war in training so the fight feels easy. Leave everything in the gym so you're fully prepared. This destroyed fighters before they entered the cage. They'd show up on fight night already damaged, concussed from sparring, carrying injuries from training too hard, too close to competition. The edge they'd built got left in the gym instead of saved for when it mattered. Modern periodization works opposite. Hard training happens early in camp. Intensity tapers as the fight approaches. The final week involves light technical work and rest. Show up fresh, not worn down. Save the damage for the paycheck. Fighters who still spar hard in fight week are considered reckless now. 20 years ago, it was standard. Myth 8. Cutting protein before weigh-ins helps with weight loss. Some old-school approaches had fighters dropping protein intake during weight cuts. Protein holds water. Less protein means less water weight. The logic seemed to make sense. The reality was muscle loss and compromised recovery. Protein is essential for maintaining muscle mass, especially during caloric restriction. Fighters who cut protein lost strength along with weight. Their bodies broke down muscle tissue for energy. They showed up to fights weaker than they should have been. Modern weight cuts maintain protein intake and manipulate other factors: water, sodium, carbohydrates. The goal is losing water weight temporarily while preserving muscle. Cutting protein does the opposite of what fighters need. Myth 9. More training volume always equals better results. If 2 hours of training is good, 4 hours must be better. If training 6 days a week works, training twice a day, 7 days a week must work better. Volume was king. The hardest working fighter would win. Lazy fighters lost. Dedicated fighters trained until they dropped. This mentality filled gyms. Coaches bragged about how hard their fighters worked, how many hours they put in, how little rest they took. Overtraining syndrome destroyed countless careers. Fighters who never took rest days broke down physically and mentally. Their performance declined even as training increased. They'd feel sluggish, slow, weak. They'd assume they needed to train harder, so they'd increase volume and get worse. The cycle continued until something broke. Immune systems weakened and fighters got sick constantly. Injuries piled up because tissues never recovered. Motivation disappeared because the nervous system was fried. The body simply couldn't recover from the accumulated stress. BJ Penn trained obsessively in his prime. Multiple sessions daily. Rarely took days off. He was considered one of the hardest workers in MMA. By the end of his career, he looked like a shell of himself. He kept fighting long past when he should have stopped. Lost to fighters who shouldn't have been competitive with prime BJ. The accumulated wear and tear had broken him down. His body couldn't perform anymore because he'd never let it recover. Modern approaches emphasize quality over quantity. Train hard, but recover harder. Strategic rest is part of the program, not a sign of weakness. Deload weeks, sleep optimization, stress management. The best coaches now monitor recovery markers and adjust training based on how fighters are responding. More isn't always better. Sometimes less training produces better results because the body actually has time to adapt. Myth 10. Extreme heat exposure during training is beneficial. Hot yoga. Training in non-air-conditioned gyms during summer. Wearing extra layers to increase sweat. The idea was that heat adaptation would help performance and accelerate weight loss. Heat stroke killed fighters. Bodies overheated during training and couldn't cool down. Organs failed. In 2017, a high school wrestler died during practice in a room with no air conditioning. The coaches thought heat was building toughness. It was building a body temperature incompatible with life. Heat adaptation has some benefits when done properly, but extreme heat exposure during intense training creates dangerous conditions. The body can only handle so much thermal stress. Pushing past those limits doesn't build mental toughness. It causes medical emergencies. Myth 11. Fighters should restrict water intake during training to get used to fighting dehydrated. If you're going to cut weight and be dehydrated for the fight, you should train dehydrated. Get your body adapted to performing without adequate hydration. This was common practice for decades. The logic was backwards. Training dehydrated reduces performance and increases injury risk. You're not adapting to anything positive. You're just training worse and hurting your body. Dehydration impairs cognitive function, reaction time, and power output. Fighters who train this way were literally making themselves worse while thinking they were getting tougher. Modern approaches keep fighters hydrated during training and only manipulate water for the actual weight cut. Training hydrated means better quality sessions. Better quality sessions mean better preparation. Fighting dehydrated is bad enough. Training dehydrated just compounds the damage. Myth 12. Static stretching before training prevents injury. The idea was that lengthening muscles before activity would prevent strains and tears. Research showed static stretching actually reduces power output and doesn't prevent injuries. Holding stretched positions before explosive activity makes muscles temporarily weaker. The injury prevention benefits were a myth. Fighters were making themselves worse before training even started. Dynamic warm-ups replaced static stretching in modern camps. Movement-based preparation that elevates heart rate and takes joints through ranges of motion. Leg swings instead of toe touches. Save the static stretching for after training when flexibility work actually helps recovery. Myth 13. You should train through concussions. Getting your bell rung was part of the game. Walk it off. Get back in there. Take a day off if you really need to, but be back sparring by the end of the week. Rest was for people who couldn't handle combat sports. Real fighters pushed through. Fighters returned to sparring days after getting knocked out in training, sometimes hours after. Coaches encouraged it. Showing weakness meant you didn't have what it takes. Second impact syndrome kills people. A brain that hasn't recovered from concussion is extremely vulnerable to additional trauma. Even minor impacts can cause catastrophic swelling when the brain is already compromised. The skull can't accommodate the swelling. Pressure builds. People die or suffer permanent damage. Fighters who trained through concussions accumulated damage that ended careers and ruined lives. CTE doesn't come from one big hit. It comes from repeated impacts on already damaged brains. Concussion protocols are now standard in legitimate gyms. Any suspected concussion means immediate removal from training. No sparring, no impact work. Medical evaluation before returning. Graduated return protocols that ease fighters back into contact over weeks, not days. The days of walking off head injuries are over in professional camps, but amateur gyms and underfunded programs still operate the old way. The damage that approach caused is still being measured in fighters who trained decades ago and are now showing symptoms. Myth 14. Supplements can replace proper nutrition. Why eat clean when you could take pills and powders? Protein shakes replace meals. Fat burners replace proper weight management. Pre-workout replaces actual energy from food. The supplement industry marketed shortcuts that fighters bought into. The results ranged from ineffective to dangerous. Contaminated supplements caused positive drug tests and ruined careers. Fighters who replaced meals with shakes missed essential nutrients. Those relying on stimulants crashed when the chemicals wore off. Some supplements contained unlisted ingredients that caused heart problems. Real nutrition from real food remains the foundation. Supplements can fill specific gaps when used correctly, but nothing replaces eating properly. Fighters who tried to shortcut nutrition paid the price in performance and health. Myth 15. Mental toughness means ignoring your body's signals. The warrior mentality that dominated combat sports said real fighters pushed through everything. Pain, exhaustion, injury. Warning signs were just weakness leaving the body. Ignoring them proved you had what it took. This killed fighters and ended careers. Bodies send signals for reasons. Pain indicates damage. Exhaustion indicates overtraining. Ignoring those signals doesn't build toughness. It builds injuries, chronic conditions, and sometimes death. Fighters collapsed from heart problems they'd ignored. They blew out joints they'd trained through. They accumulated brain damage by refusing to acknowledge concussions. True mental toughness includes knowing when to push and when to stop. Listening to your body doesn't make you weak. It keeps you in the sport long enough to achieve your potential. The fighters with the longest careers are often the ones who trained smart, not just hard. These 15 myths killed people, ended careers, caused permanent damage. They seemed reasonable at the time. Coaches who taught them weren't evil. They were passing down what they'd learned. But being well-intentioned doesn't make something safe. The sport knows better now. The question is whether everyone gets that message. Let me know in the comments if you've encountered any of these myths in your training. Thank you for watching Loving Fighters.